This is our last show of 2021. What's up, guys? You're watching Raptors Today. I'm Savanna Hamilton alongside Paul Jones and Sherman Hamilton. Amy Audibert, of course, will be joining us a little bit later. This is actually part 2 of our recap video for the year for the Toronto Raptors. So we're going to pick it up where we left off. If you want to watch part 1, you can catch it on YouTube. Don't worry, it's just a quick YouTube search away. Let's go back a little bit to the offseason. Jonesy, I'm going to start with you first. There was rumors that the Raptors would be coming back to Scotiabank Arena, not playing in Tampa. How important was it to make sure that they were to play in their own venue for the start of the season?
Well, we talked about all the tumult that happened when they had to pick up and leave and move to Tampa, and you know how it was home, but it wasn't home. It was visiting. They were renting a place. It wasn't really theirs, and you get into routines when you're at home. You take guys that have been on the team, 5 or 6 years, a guy like Fred or a Pascal that knows Toronto. And it's not just your building and your venue and your practice facility and all those things that Tampa was trying to ably recreate but couldn't. It's the other stuff around the city, where you go to get your groceries, where do you go to drop off your dry cleaning, where, if you're a family guy, where your kids play or where you take them, and all of those things. So it's great. It was great for the team to be coming back. And, we laughed about it. OG Wnba actually said he missed the traffic on the Gardner. I don't know how anybody could miss that, but let's face it, it was good for them to be back in their own building and to get the support of their fans too. That's the other thing too. We talked about in Tampa how at times you had fans that were displaced from other areas of the U.S. in Tampa actually cheering for the other team and what was supposed to be the Raptors' home venue. So nice for them to get back, nice for them to get back into routine and look forward to being more of a normal season, so to speak.
Exactly. How bad is it when you miss the traffic on the Gardner? I'm stressed for them. But, let's talk about the preseason, Sherm, specifically the rookies in particular, Scotty Barnes and Delano Benton, because they had a big developmental streak in between the time that we saw them play in Summer League and preseason.
Yeah, and that's the kind of growth if you're a Raptor franchise that have chosen to invest in these two young players. That's what you want to see. You want to see that growth, that development, that continuation of learning, and the ability to actually implement things while you're learning. And I think both these guys showed it. And, with Scotty Barnes, I think we were all unaware of what he was capable of. But this Raptors organization drafted him for a reason. And they did it because they were more aware of what he could be, understood what his base skill sets were, and felt that they could build on that based on all the testing they do, including the personality testing. So, but Delano Benton is a bit of a different situation. Again, a guy who is drafted in the second round. And, usually second round guys, they're here, they're there. Maybe they work out, maybe they're a bench guy. But Delano's consistent improvement and his ability between Summer League and the regular season with training camp, just showing that he has a skill set that they can utilize right away in terms of his length, his playmaking ability, his defensive awareness, and just his overall feel for the game. And I think with Scotty, what really impressed me is I did not know he could shoot the basketball like that. Off the dribble, he has a nice touch in terms of in the box with a little jump hook. But from 18 feet, he's got a really nice game for a young player. And Delano, his ability to see what's happening, to see the play. Now, he always didn't execute it, but to see the play, you knew he saw what was happening. And I think the great thing about him is you just see such a high ceiling for his development. So both these young men have done a great job at really taking strides since we first saw them in Summer League.
Absolutely. I would say that even Delano's shot as well is changing. You see it mechanically in a better place, I think, than we saw in Summer League. So that's something that I've been keeping my eye out for sure, especially when I see him down playing with the 905 as well. But Jonesy, let's talk past the preseason, the formation of this new roster. We had a new face join the team. Mahai Hyluk has joined on a 2-year deal. So clearly Nick Nurse saw something in him.
Yeah, they did. And the front office did. And look, he's a guy who came into the league known for his shooting and his ability to stretch the floor and be a threat. help create driving lanes for other people. And not just a guy who might make a shot. He can make shots. He does make shots from out there, and he does space the floor well. But then we see some other things from him too. You play to your strength. He knows he's a shooter. That's what he does best. But in order to stay on the floor, he firmly realized he was going to have to do other things. He was going to have to work hard defensively. He was going to have to be, part of a solid defensive unit. He was going to have to move the ball and be unselfish on offense, knowing that his opportunities might be limited. So I thought he fit in well. And I look back at a couple of games in particular. There was a game in Indiana, in the beginning of the season, another game in New York when he came in and he played really, really well. And I don't know if he caught people by surprise, but again, I think playing in a system with Nick Nurse coaching, Nick opens the box up a little bit for you. I know what other people say you can do. And yes, we've seen that, and this is what you can do, but we're going to widen your lane a little bit. We're going to let you roam a little bit within some constraints still, but still we're going to open it up for you. And I think Svi's taken advantage of that. And he's a guy that Nick is not afraid to go to the bench and put him into the game. And, if he gets it going and he seems to have a hot hand, the coach will ride it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was the hustle on top of the fact that he was shooting the ball really well, especially in the preseason, and taking that forward into the season as well. And Jonesy, on that note, we're actually going to talk about the first 2 months of the season. So Jonesy, I want to go to you first for this one, because you were there the night that the Raptors came home for the first time. What was the energy like?
It was really good. People were dying to see their team. The Ontario government had lifted their restrictions to the point where they could have a full house. Unfortunately, the team didn't perform all that well, and they got derailed by a Washington squad that had come in with their own ideas and under a new coach themselves. But again, it was part of what we talked about earlier: the process of coming back, reestablishing your connection with the city, with the building, being around the practice facilities. And I just remember the energy when Herbie Kuhn threw it to Mark Strong, and you're going to have the team introduced again. A lot of appreciative faces, a lot of fans, standing and applauding and really happy that the team was back. And you could see it in the eyes of the players too, guys coming out onto the floor and saying hello to, us broadcast people who they hadn't seen in a year, because we were doing the games up here when they were in Tampa, dapping up ushers and security people. So it was a great feeling to be back in the building, and there was a lot of positive energy. Unfortunately, Washington sapped all that away when they got the win.
Yeah, exactly. But, let's talk about that start of the season. And Sherman, I'm going to turn to you for this one, because the Raptors, they started off 1-3, but then they rifled off 5 straight wins. How did what did you make of the season start like that?
I thought it was kind of a settling in. You're back in town. You're trying to figure out some things. And remember, with the departure of Kyle Lowry, this is a very different team now. I mean, that era was done and a new era was starting with Fred VanVleet and Pascal Ciaco. They're supposed to take this team into the next phase. And there was some figuring out in October, but they got it going a bit. They went on that little streak there. And that happens when there's a comfort level, there's more of an understanding, there's a rhythm to what's happening. I mean, Fred was playing a lot of minutes during that stretch as well. And I'm sure he didn't want to necessarily continue that throughout the rest of the season, but they were doing some very good things. They moved the basketball well. I thought they played in transition with consistency. But this team came into the season with the focused goal of creating turnovers, being active with their hands in terms of deflections, and making sure they capitalize off those turnovers. And during that stretch, Sav, I thought they did a great job on the defensive end, then complemented it with the offensive end, and we talked about new guys on the roster, guys getting more opportunities. I thought Scotty was great. I thought Delano was great. Svi had his moments, but overall, different guys chipped in with the leadership of Fred, because, you're still working without a Pascal Ciaco at that juncture. So it was a nice stretch to see what this team could do in terms of when they're playing at their peak level and doing most of the things that they know they're capable of doing consistently. They're a very tough team to beat.
Absolutely. And moving on into November now, some tough losses, a tough road trip, especially on the West Coast. But then Pascal Siakam came back. There were some silver linings to this. But, how long does it really truly take to get back up to speed when you're coming from an injury? He did have shoulder surgery.
Well, I think, again, with Pascal, he missed so much time, and we all hear the terminology of jumping on a moving train. Well, he literally was jumping on a moving train, and the team was going through some struggles. So he came back to the lineup, and you're on the road, a 6-game road trip. It's a difficult situation for anybody to enter in. And for him, maybe the added pressure of expectation, understanding that now it's clearly him and Fred VanVleet that are the leaders. But I thought Pascal handled it well. I thought he really tried to play within himself until he started to get more rhythm. But that road trip, as difficult as it ended up being for the Raptors from a record perspective, they were really close to coming home 3-3 off of that road trip. They had a chance to get it done, and they just weren't able to do that. And it was a weird road trip. You start out west, you move to Memphis, then you end up their last game in Indiana on the East Coast. It was just a difficult road trip overall, but it was still a road trip where, with all the things that happened, they were almost able to come back 500. So that says a lot about who they are, and they fought it right to the end, just weren't able to get the job done to even up that road trip.
Exactly. And I think we don't give him enough credit for that. Not to mention, some other notes to point out that Yuta Watanabe, he returned back to the lineup, but then there was also a string of injuries. We saw Scotty Barnes with the thumb injury. We saw OG Anunoby with a hip pointer as well. And, I think Gary Trent Jr. missed some here and there as well. And so they do add up, especially when you have so many new faces on the team as well. This is not just, plug and play last year's same roster. It's a completely different team, a lot younger. So that comes with learning and growth as well. But we're going to throw it over to our fourth member of our squad, Amy Audibert, to give us her 3 best plays of the season so far. Welcome back to Raptors Shade. We're going to bring in Amy Audibert to give us her top 3 plays of the Raptors season so far.
Thanks so much, Sav. It's been a pretty fun season for the Raptors. We know they're young, and that means there's going to be a learning curve, but that also means there's going to be some pretty exciting stuff too. So while there are a lot of moments, let's take a look at 3 of the more memorable ones, and we got to start with Mr. Scotty Barnes.
Got a piece of it, and Banton once again defensively running the floor. A monster slam by Scotty Barnes. Whoa!
Check this out. Scotty grabs a defensive rebound, only a couple feet from the rim, busts all the way down the middle, takes 3 whole dribbles. Nobody stops him. And you go until somebody stops you. I think this was when the whole league got put on notice. Mr. Barnes is here. He's a Toronto Raptor. And also check out the celebration from Kem Birch after that. It got me pumped up. It got the whole arena pumped up, and certainly his teammates too. For the second look, we're going to turn to a familiar face, Pascal Ciaco, who went head-to-head with the fellow All-Star.
If there's an update to provide, we'll get it to you. But the Raptors right now, the update is dunk for Pascal Ciaco, straight down Main Street and right into the 10. Raptors up 10.
Once again, this one develops out of a defensive stop for the Raptors, and Fred VanVleet with the textbook pocket pass right to Pascal, running down the middle. And it looks like nobody's going to greet him, but then KD slides over and tries. But what you absolutely love is Pascal going up with a 2-handed flush with some authority. He didn't try to bring it to the side. That is attitude, and that is owning the rim. And for a final memorable moment, let's go to a little bit of history here. The first Canadian to ever be drafted by the Toronto Raptors at number 46, Delano Benton.
Clock. Dinwiddie dumps it off. Harrell slam dunk. 2.5 seconds remaining. Delano lets it fly. Got it! From Rackstown! Will that spark?
It was the home opener, and it was the end of the third quarter, and it was a 25-point game, but Delano Benton comes in and makes his first bucket as a Toronto Raptor, of course, in fashion, a buzzer beater. But if you listen to the energy of the crowd, this moment was not about a game or a score. It was the history. It was the hometown hero who, quite frankly, hasn't looked back.
We've been doing a season review, so Jonesy, let's get to it. Let's talk about December, current month that we're in. What did you see improve on the Raptors team this past year? We got some solid wins, but some very close buzzer beater losses as well.
Look, I thought they started the month, as you said, Sav, with some really solid wins. They started to play better at home because that was something that we talked about coming home and the energy of the crowd, and they didn't quite feed off it as much. They had a couple of losses. I can think of even dating back to November, 3 or 4 games that you would love to have had back where you played well at home, but still learning how to win, couldn't pull out the victories. They turned that around at the beginning of the month. They started to play better at home. They had a better defensive rating, to start the month off. And they started with, solid wins. So give the team credit for being able to do that, and give the coaching staff some credit for identifying what needed to be done, turning it around. And then, Sherman talked about it earlier. We look at the play of Scotty Barnes, how he continued to play well at the start of the month and really did a nice job. He had to spend some time in the health and safety protocols, but before that, he'd done a really, really good job of expanding his game, taking on more, being more aggressive, taking on more of the load at both ends of the floor. And he continued to impress. So it was a good start to the month. The idea is now get everybody healthy, get back, and forge forward into 2022 and try to come out on the other side in a better spot.
Yeah, you said it right there. Get healthy. Sherm, towards the holiday season, we saw this across the entire league. A lot of players entering health and safety protocols. How much of an issue is this?
Well, it is an issue. It's a pretty big issue when you talk about the NBA trying to manage this. And listen, nobody wants the game to shut down. Nobody wants the league to have to stop. So the NBA is trying to do everything they can to, while they keep everybody's health and safety at the top of the list, still figure out creative ways to try and keep it moving forward. And I don't think they want to be put in a situation where they feel they have to completely stop the season or pause the season. So it's difficult. I mean, we've seen them be able to extend the league and the players in terms of bringing players in via hardship and allow two-way players to play more than their maximum of 50 games just to try and fill rosters sometimes. I do think at some point with this setup, there does become a different quality of basketball. And that's no knock on the players that are being signed to fill roster spots. But the reality is, if you don't have your NBA players there and you're fulfilling those roster spots with G League players, the level of basketball is going to be different. And that's something that the NBA is going to have to probably deal with from a public perception. But the NBA is trying to do everything to mitigate and make sure that they keep everybody healthy and safe. But what we're seeing and what we've seen so far is that once one player gets it, it just kind of starts to permeate through the team. A couple of days later, we hear another 2 and then 3. And then all of a sudden now there's 8, 9, 10 guys in protocol. So it's something that at least they're going to have to deal with. They're not the only league dealing with it. And it's indicative of what's happening in our world. And the NBA as an organization is just trying to figure out the best way to mitigate all the issues that come with COVID running through the NBA.
Absolutely. It's like the micro view of what's actually happening in the greater society even. But, let's spin this towards a more positive subject as well. Jonesy, looking back on 2021, geez, can't believe we're already at the end here.
I know.
What are some top moments for you?
Well, first of all, when it comes to athletes in general, and particularly the NBA and the WNBA, their continued crusade into the world of social justice. We saw it kick off in the bubble, but the platform that they have and the way they are using it to continue to move the ball down the court when it comes to social justice issues, particularly around equity, inclusivity, and diversity, that really strikes a chord with me. It resonates with me because that's, we just talked about how COVID is a microcosm of the world in the NBA. Well, this is too, and standing up and speaking for rights and equality and leveling the playing field. We've seen so much being done. The most recent thing, Fred VanVleet with his scholarship. So that stands out for me in 2021. And finally, seeing Candace Parker win a WNBA championship, going back to her hometown. Like that's storybook, and just the momentum that the WNBA created. So I could go on. We could do a whole hour on this on I'm not even touching the plays and stuff with some of the actual plays that happened on the court, but those are some of the things for me, Sab, that really stood out about 2021.
Jonesy, you know how I feel about the WNBA. So if you want to do a side
Me too.
podcast, I'm all
Me
here
too.
for it. Sure, I'm going to throw it to you now for what your hopes are going into 2022 for this Raptors squad.
Well, I feel very safe in speaking for all of us that we want this team to be healthy. We want them to
Absolutely.
be safe. We want them to get to 2022 and everybody be functioning at an optimum level. I mean, that's the goal. And that's not just for the Raptors, of course. That's for our world in general. We want to see health. I think ultimately, though, from a basketball perspective, we've seen some real good tenets on the defensive side of the basketball from this team that I'd like to see them become even more consistent with their activity. We talked about earlier, the deflections, the turnovers, the getting out in transition. I'd like to see them become a better defensive rebounding team in 2022 because they get misses, but sometimes they hurt themselves by giving up the second chance opportunity, by giving up the rebound. And offensively, just some consistency. And to my first point, if they're healthy and they have people in the lineup that can consistently be relied upon, then this team is different on the offensive end. They have more options. They have a better way of going about it. When they hit those droughts offensively, Nick Nurse has more weapons to get the ball to create offense. But, just touching on the back of Jonesy's, things that he looks back in 2021 and kind of thinks were special. I'm happy for Raptor fans to be able to see their team back in their home market and to be able to cheer for them in their arena. Remember, this is the only crowd of the 30 teams in the NBA that wasn't able to do that last season. So I think it's huge for them to be able to do that. And it's huge for the Raptors as well. And for us as broadcasters to have the team back and to be able to interact on a different level, it helps everything that we do. So grateful for that and really happy for the fans.
I mean, all three of us were used to it when we were in studios, not directly interacting with any players or even on a court. And so this year was the first year that I was sideline reporting, actually on a sideline, not in a studio miles and miles away from the Raptors 905. But, to both of your points, such growth that we've seen off the court this past year in the game of basketball, whether it's the women's game or the men's game. But that's something that really resonated with me for 2021 as well. It's, I think 2020 kicked it off. It started the conversations, but the ball really got rolling this past year. And we saw it with initiatives like you mentioned, Jonesy, with Fred VanVleet, just continuing that conversation and putting action behind his words as well.
Yeah.
Delano as well, giving back right away to Rexdale. He's still a rookie in the league. And how many months in to his career he's already giving back? It speaks volumes. But, to our audience, thank you for tuning in to another year of Raptors Today, for watching us here from Savanna Hamilton, from Paul Jones, Sherman Hamilton, and our amazing crew behind the scenes, producer Jake LaRue, and our editor Luke. Thank you for watching Raptors Today.